Alright, so guys, I want to be kind of clear that this is kind of a rough idea that, I made for a villain. So, I might, actually change it maybe sometime. Alright, we have today, with us Barnell. Yeah, that's the name of the villain, and yes, I chose the owl aesthetic because anybody has the bat aesthetic, and, owls, eat bats. And, owls are and, yeah. Also, no, also, yes, she is also a magical girl, yeah. Yes, Barnell is a magical girl. She's an evil magical girl. Wait, I suppose in Madoka terms that makes her a witch, huh? Anyway, I better get on with it. Get on with it! Yeah, get on with it! This superheroine is a young girl with a haughty and cold demeanor, such who was the queen of her school long ago and developed a rather entitled personality, and as such was wanted a quick shortcut to obtaining magical power so that she could not only rule her school but become a super popular and powerful heroine that could one up all the other heroes in the city, especially the number one heroine, Indamati. Oh, whoops. Alright, now. And so she broke into a secure police facility after the Frankenstein incident. Yes, Dr. Frankenstein is in the lore. Yes, he is a villain. And he's kind of involved with the horror story dimension. He's kind of involved with the dimension of horror. He kind of, messed around with the Argostia and, summoned demons from, dimension 666. which is basically a prison for, dimension 666 is kind of an alternate dimension that kind of, died a long time ago. And basically was taken over by aliens that basically kind of resemble demons. It's all a big thing there. Anyway, using her police connections to steal the Argosy in order to make a deal with the entities of Planet Heck from Dimension 666. Yes, Planet Heck is the main world that the demon aliens live on. Whom she knew could trade abilities and power in exchange for certain services and sacrifices. She even sacrificed one of the girls she had previously bullied to awaken an entity known as Stalos. Oh no, the owl. Yeah, this has nothing to do with Husband Hotel, just, gonna let you know about that. Before anybody says anything. Yeah, the character did... yeah, Stalos did exist before that, by the way. Who appeared as a human-faced Barnell, like monster who agreed to their contract and became her familiar and turned her into an owl-themed, supervillain known as Barnell. She agreed as part of the contract to defeat Indamati, as Indamati had been a thorn in the side of, Planet X activity back on Earth I. Yeah, namely from the Frankenstein incident. Oh, come on now. Alright, now. She would go all out, thinking Stalos was an angelic being that had given her a powerful blessing on par with Indamati's Luna. Yeah, Luna is actually a celestial, so... yeah. Yeah, and Luna, funny enough, she's actually part of the right side up, Moon Arcana. With the Muse of Darkness being that upside down one. The Muse of Darkness is kind of major to the lore, too, yeah. Well, Luna was basically, into my mentor, yeah. Well, one of them. To try and fight Alright, now let's continue with the story. To try and fight crime, what she attacked a group of robbers and stopped them from robbing a bank, but due to her pride and selfishness, decided to steal some of the money for herself. It's fine as long as I stop the robbers. I can, just take some of the money for myself. I'm sure the bank won't, think me a criminal for doing that. She would also, for pretense, give long friendship speeches that play up her role as a magical girl and defender of justice, and even use brainwashing magic to try and force criminals to be her simps. It would give her everything by giving friendship speeches that are laced with the mirror and Karen charm spells. Oh, now we know how inaccurate that is. By the way, Barnell would, fail most of these, roles to try and charm people. She would repeat this pattern for a while, often brutalize criminals when she struck, until she would cross paths with Indamati, who was quick to call her out for attacking gang members only to rob them before turning them into the cops because Indamati knew it was evidence for their deeper operations in the city. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so we can't tamper with evidence. That's a good rule. Which Barnell thought Indamati wanted the money for herself, So picked a fight, and Barnell, despite her power and speed, was defeated and captured by the police, who were quick to connect her with the theft from criminals and brutal attacks. Yeah, because she was, tampering with evidence. So she held, so she held for a while. So she was held for a while before being released, but due to her rich family's lawyers, who managed to get her off, and she was fuming that Enemi's perceived selfishness in her own eyes and wanted to take her down for good, but needed new allies to help her. Which drew her to the Red Cloak Hunters. Yeah, I actually need to go over to Red Cloak Hunters, at some point. Yeah, basically they're like a corrupt adventurer guild that used to be a, actual good adventurer guild. Long ago before, the money and power started rolling in, and they kind of, and some of the newer members that were a little bit more corrupt, kind of took over from the old leadership. That was, started by, the woodsman who, from the Red Riding Hood story. Yeah, he's also in it too. Well, specifically his family and descendants. Specifically the people he basically made into a found family, I should say. Due to basically training them to basically be the next generation of, monster hunters and heroes to protect people from dangerous monsters. Yeah, unfortunately his guild kind of got taken over out from under his family and, by, very corrupt people. Anyway. Alright, now I'll continue. Alright, now, what's your to the Red Cloak Hunters, who were looking for powerful heroes to side with them, and she offered her services and family's connection and finances to help her and them get better stuff and better training, which made her elevate into the tiers quickly, due to corruption. And then join an elite group of anti-monster busters who were all self-proclaimed heroes known as the Bloodhounds. Yeah, they're like the most elite group of, the Red Cloak Hunters, by the way. And she became one of their ace members, which Salos didn't mind because it meant to get past itself also as an angelic advisor, and also unseal the 9 great evils. Yeah, the reason, Salos didn't want to unseal those is because they're kind of the descendants of, they're kind of descendants of I was kind of running with the idea that they're descendants of Legion members. Presumably, yeah, that's part of what I was going with at this time. But she ascended led the group to, of would-be heroes in an attempt to unseal. Yeah, the Ascended, wanted to unseal it because, basically they're bad guy angels and, they're basically the ones responsible for the Box of Evils incident, which, involved releasing the great evils upon humanity because they wanted, basically use it as an excuse to kind of control and enslave and, do war crimes, basically. Yeah. Anyway, alright now. The Ascended led the group of would-be heroes into attempting to unseal the 9 great evils, which Plant Hex forces, being descendants of Legion's forces, wanted it as part of their own goals. Barnell would eventually come across the Dark Lord and found out the new one was her old rival Ennemati Evening Knight, who was protecting the seals, which Alos urged her to fight against her to unseal the seals for hero work, lying about his reasons and intentions, but Ennemati would eventually defeat her once again, and despite the fear of House and the advantage Barnell would had because of it, and would destroy her own familiar, and later send her off to the Fairyland prison for bad guys and monsters, Ennemati vowing to find a way to break the contract from Barnell by, getting back her soul from Legion. Which Barnell was still seething and looking for revenge, even though even long after her re-release, pursuing Ennemati all the way to Planet Hack in Dimension 666, to a very large room where, all the soul contracts of said magical girl power scam, which was held by their leaders, only for Ennemati to destroy each contract and free Barnell, kind of dissipating her powers, and for Barnell to lose her powers and, become an ordinary girl again, before being sent back to Earth-Eye's mortal plane once more. And the last of the copies of Argosias was destroyed to try and prevent, people from using it to summon Planet Hex entities back into reality to continue their scams, at least for a time. Now the only copy is in Lumina Knight's hands, what she used to summon, people, entities from Planet Heck in order to, as enforcers for herself, while under Lil's authority as the Queen of Evil. as henchmen, including Stalos, who was mechanized and reborn anew from his corpse, and tried to manipulate Varnell again, but she was happy with her mortal life, and so he was unable, much to his anger and disappointment. All right, now I should go over. All right, Varnell's powers give her owl-like features such as wings, what she can put away, and the ability to summon owls and generate tones, as well as night vision and stealth, as well as heightened speed and agility. She also uses darkness element magic due to the power of darkness that was given to her. Her outfit resembles a burnout-like outfit with feathers of white and gray and black, and a jacket-like appearance, and sort of like a feathery robe appearance, with a soft short skirt and stockings modeled after a grayish black bird talons and clawed boots, with a hat resembling a owl's head. And she also has speed to dive at sonic speed, and can use facial magic to move about using darkness magic to strike with a surprise attack. She also can let out a sonic howl of an owl, which Endomati especially, which Endomati due to being basically Batkin, is especially weak to due to fear and panic and paranoia and confusion, which also works on a lot of other enemies too. All right, now I need to decide what to do with Dimension 666 as well as Planet Heck. All right, now. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope you had plenty of fun. Remember to fly like Bat and shine like the man for your stuff dreams are made of. I may have to revise this a bit later sometime. Or maybe one day. Anyway, see you later. Goodbye.